Okay, let's get to it. Here I have 4 white bread rolls, also known as Pan Bolillio. I picked these up at my local panderia. So this recipe, you actually want to use about 6 to 8 bread rolls. Because I'm going to be making smaller portions, I'm actually only going to use 4, but I will put the full recipe in the description box below. Okay, so here what I'm doing is just tearing all of the bread into small pieces. Now, typically, if you're going to do this in a 9x13 baking dish, you want to slice them thinly so you can do layers. But because I'm going to be putting these in smaller mini loaves, I'm going to rip these into small pieces. You don't have to use a knife. Ripping them with your clean hands works just as well. And before I finish tearing the pieces off of this last pan bolillo, I just wanted to show you the other way that you can slice your bread. And basically that is just to do thin slices. You want to toast all your slices just like I'm going to toast my ripped pieces of bread. And then you would just layer it through your baking dish. So that is another way that you can do this. Okay, so now that my bread is all torn into pieces, I just wanted to show you, you could use a 9x13 baking dish and you would just layer your bread with the rest of the ingredients and just do layers until you're finished and then you bake it. But like I mentioned earlier, I am going to be doing individual portions and I found these cute mini loaf containers. And these are non-stick mini loaf containers that I saw at the grocery store. And I thought this would be the perfect gift for my family members. Instead of baking one large capirotada dish, I can give them their own individual mini loaf of capirotada. So that is something to think about. And again, I will be putting the full recipe in the description box below. Okay, so back to my pan bolillo. Now that it's all torn into small pieces, I'm just going to spread it out on my baking pan, and I am going to bake this in the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes, or until I see all the pieces are nice and golden brown. Okay, so now that my bread is baking, I want to show you the rest of the ingredients. Here I have 8 ounces of piloncillo, and piloncillo is basically brown sugar, dark brown sugar, and cane syrup. So if you cannot find piloncillo, dark brown sugar, light brown sugar, about a cup to a cup and a half of that will work. I'm also going to be using 2 to 3 cinnamon sticks. Next, I'll also be using 1/3 to a 1/2 cup of raisins. I actually like to use 1/3 cup for the amount that I'm using, but again, the full recipe will be using about a 1/2 cup. I'm also going to be using a full cup of mozzarella cheese. You could use any cheese that you like, but I had an abundance of mozzarella cheese. I'm also going to be using 4.5 cups of water. And before I forget, I'm also going to be using 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. On to the next step. Here I have a saucepan, and I'm going to pour in my 4.5 cups of water. I'm going to bring that to a boil. Now before I do that, I'm also going to toss in 2 to 3 cinnamon sticks. And this is going to be the foundation for our sugar syrup that's going to be poured over our bread. Eventually, the piloncillo is going to go into the water, but I want to give the cinnamon sticks a head start. I want them to steep longer into the water just so it can get a really strong cinnamon flavor. So while that's coming up to a boil, I am now going to pull out the bread, and as you can see, it is nice and toasted. And this is going to just sop up all of that sugar syrup. Now, if you're working with a bread that's not toasted, your bread pudding or your capirotada might come out too mushy, so you want to make sure you toast it. Okay, so now that my water and cinnamon sticks have been boiling and steeping, I am going to add the piloncillo. And this piloncillo, if you haven't worked with it before, is very hard. It's almost like rock candy, but you want to make sure it dissolves completely. Now that all of my piloncillo is dissolved into the cinnamon water, I'm going to fish out all of the cinnamon sticks. And if there are pieces that are still floating in your sugar syrup, basically you want to strain it. And that's what I'm going to do. After removing the cinnamon sticks, I'm going to strain all of this liquid. Okay, so now it is time to put this together. So typically you would want to layer everything in your baking dish. You would put some bread, some sugar syrup, raisins, cheese, and just keep layering until you're finished with it. But because I'm putting these into individual mini loaves, I'm going to mix it all together in a big bowl. Then I'm going to place it into my loaf cups. And I also would like to mention other traditional ingredients that I'm not using today, by the way, include peanuts, ripe banana, shredded coconut. You can also add almonds. I've even had capirotada that has like Mexican hard candies in it. I don't know what they're called, but they're colorful, hard sugar candies. But today I'm just going to keep it simple and basic. And the reason why I don't use peanuts in my capirotada is because I'm a peanut-free house. My son has peanut allergies. But other alternatives, should you want extra crunch and you too are allergic to peanuts, you could also add roasted pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds. So those are other options. But today I'm keeping it simple. And right now, little by little, I'm going to ladle the sugar syrup and then mix. You don't want to just dump in all of the syrup because then your bread will get too soggy and it won't have that shape. You don't want it to turn to mush. So I'm just going to gently mix it around while continuing to add the sugar syrup until everything is saturated. Okay, so now I'm just going to start filling in my mini loaf cups. I also want to add, if you do decide to make the smaller version of this, if you don't have the mini loaf cups, you can use an 8-inch square pan or an 8-inch round cake pan. But again, I will put the full recipe where you can use the 9x13 dish in the description box below. Also, what I used for the mini loaf pans, or if you want to use a cake pan, an 8-inch cake pan or square baking dish. So here, all I'm doing is I'm going to put a layer of the soaked bread and raisins. Then I'm going to add the shredded cheese. And I really think it's the salty cheese and the sweet bread pudding with the raisins. It's just a wonderful combination. And with these mini loaves, it's just a nice surprise with the cheese melty in the middle. Okay, so I have layered the bread pudding inside my mini loaf cups, and now I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit more of sugar syrup on top. I'm not going to be using all 4.5 cups of the sugar syrup for the smaller portion that I'm doing today, but if you do use the full-size recipe, which I will be putting in the description box below, you would want to use all of the syrup. Okay, so now I'm going to place them into my baking sheet, and now I'm going to top them with little pieces of butter. Now that that is done, I will be topping this with aluminum foil, and I am going to bake this in a preheated oven of 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes covered, and then an additional 15 minutes uncovered. If you do decide to do the larger recipe, you would want to bake it for 20 minutes covered and then 15 minutes uncovered. But again, I'm using the mini loaves and it's a smaller portion, so I'm going to take off about 5 minutes of cook time. It's been 15 minutes, so now I'm going to uncover it and allow it to bake uncovered at 350 degrees for an additional 15 minutes. And this is going to get the top golden brown and crusty. My capirotada is done, and I will say it is best served warm. So I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching. Hey guys, you can click on the video icons for more recipes, or you can click on my picture icon to subscribe. Thanks for watching.